Hey, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. And if you're new to the channel, welcome and thanks for watching, subscribing, all that stuff. I don't say hi to the new people often enough on the channel. I just kind of assume everyone's been watching every single video, which isn't how the internet works, but I mean, I watch every video, so you should really. But this is neither here nor there. This is going to be the games leaving the collection for August. I'm going through all the various games that I'm trying to get rid of because the nature of, well, playing games, of gathering games, of collecting games is going to be there's a cycle. You get new games in, sometimes new games have to go. You'll have people who've been in the hobby for 10 years and they have 50 games in their collection. And then you'll have people, not myself obviously, who may get their hands on too many games and games have to cycle, or you have to start buying more houses, and I can't buy more houses, so the games, they are going. Now, this video, this particular episode, we have one for every single month, going back a year and a half now, and this particular episode, I usually try to get at least 10 games. Sometimes I succeed, most of the time I succeed. I couldn't. Like, I straight up could not get to 10. I got to 9 games, and that was us trying really, really hard to get to 9 games. I am, whenever I get rid of games, it's going to be a combination of games that weren't for me, which we'll have some of those in this video. And then there are many, many, many games that were for me and that I want to own and I want to have, but I'm always getting games, and the ones that are the best for me are the ones that are going to stay, which inevitably means making hard choices. It means that every additional episode we have every single month is going to have hard choices, games that I want to keep, but realistically I have to make decisions about where my time is spent, which means if you see your favorite game, which we'll have a good 2 or 3 here that I think are really worth fighting for, but we'll have some of those games where they're good games. It's not that I don't like them. It's that I like a lot of games and I have to choose where my time is being spent. Don't forget, there are no bad games. There's only bad people. There's not bad people. I shouldn't have said that. This is where I should edit. We're going to go ahead and start off with timestamps down below to any relevant section, but we're going to start with, well, 2 that I reviewed this month, so they shouldn't really be a surprise. Starting off with Shamans over here. We have Shamans, which I reviewed this month already. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I enjoyed the puzzle. It's a trick-taking experience, but a very interesting trick-taking experience in which you're playing on teams, but you're not winning as a team. In Shamans, you're going to be trying to, well, depending on which faction you are, you're either trying to progress or stop the progress, and you're trying to play tricks, but it's a little bit of a hit and roll situation because you could fail a trick and you could fail it because you couldn't have passed the trick, or because you chose to fail it because you're bad and you want bad things to happen. But that can result in the good people teaming up and trying to slowly kill you in the game, which is all a factor. But overall, I really enjoyed the uniqueness of the game. My initial bias that's worth noting is, while I enjoyed Shamans, I don't love trick-taking games in general, so I was hoping this one would be different enough to be one of the few that make it pass, like The Crew, which is a trick-taking game that's cooperative, and that works for me. Shamans was good. Shamans was a game that I enjoyed, but not one that I'm in a rush to dive back into. Now, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one that I also reviewed, which is going to be Gods Love Dinosaurs by Pandasaurus Game. I've had this one in my awards. I've had this one in my collection for roughly 8 to 9 months. I played it a bunch of times over those 8 to 9 months, and I don't know exactly how many plays I've given this. I think I've given it maybe 4 or 5 plays, where I kept on playing it, and every additional play just got less interesting. It's not that I don't like the game. I do like the game. This is another one I gave a 3 out of 5, but rather that the first play was really, really good, and then the second play was the same as the first play, and the third play was the same as the second play, onwards and so forth. Nothing about the experience felt variable to me. In this game, you're trying to basically build up an ecosystem, and it does so very well. That ecosystem you're building is managing the various, well, livestock almost that you're going to be creating and that are going to be populating across the land, but then managing your predators to eat the various prey, and then managing your dinosaurs to eat the predators. It's a well-balanced ecosystem. It's a game that works really well and plays well at a variety of player levels or counts. Again, my one problem with it is the lack of variability means that Gods Love Dinosaurs was an easier choice when choosing a game that wouldn't really stick around, the game that I enjoyed but wasn't keeping long-term. It's a game that I think would really well suited to an expansion being added to, well, improve the experience. By the way, if you hear any drilling, pounding, sawing upstairs, it's because my wife for the past 6 weeks has been, well, basically redoing our kitchen, which on the one hand is awesome because we're not paying a contractor for it. On the other hand, there's going to be lots of noises, and we are living in a house with, well, we have 4 children, and we're living in a house that is not the largest to begin with, and now has a full room that is being worked on while everything else is in other rooms. Sorry for the tangent. I just heard the saw going, and so I'm jumping into that. Either way, moving on to the next one. This is going to be the only one on the list that I have not played. In general, I always, well, get the games. It's part of the the nature of seeing games, trying to get them, and then you get something shiny and you want to play it. Now, I do try to play most games that I get. I don't like that mindset of just getting stuff and then getting rid of it without even experiencing it along the way. Don't get me wrong, I can make a strong argument for the joy you get out of the collection process, whether or not you actually play them. I mean, think of those people with bookshelves full of books they've never read. It's the same basic concept. There's an enjoyment to the research, to the searching, to the finding it on sale, to the getting it and then turning around and trading it or selling it elsewhere, having a minimal amount of loss in the process. And before you judge me, think of all the Steam games, Steam video games that you've bought and never played. It's the same basic concept, just this one I actually get to trade or sell on the way out, and those ones, those are yours forever. Neither here nor there. Lots of tangents today. Must be drinking too much coffee. But Sorcerer by Wise Wizard Games. This is one that I've heard good things about it. It's going to be a 2-player competitive game. I can't tell you that much about it. The reason this one is on my hit list is while I have been intrigued by it, while I've heard good things about the game, and while in general I do like card games, at the same time, even when I got this, I only got it because it was very cheap when I did get it, but I only got it because of the fact that it's cheap, knowing full well that my bias is against this style of game. When you have those 2-player games with a bunch of cards, bunch of decks, depending on the system, sometimes they really work for me. Take Dominion. I love Dominion. I love diving into Dominion again and again as a 2-player experience. I actually think is the sweet spot where you can have a fun little game with minimal downtime, and there are many games in that genre that I really enjoy. But when you have the competitive style games where I really have to be fighting against you and knowing your cards, your deck, the various factions or whatnot, those don't tend to last as long. There will be exceptions, but knowing that I'm already biased against what Sorcerer is made it a slightly easier choice when looking at, I was really trying to get, I basically managed to pull 5 games out that I was ready to get rid of, and then I had to really scrounge through my entire collection to find even 4 more. I really couldn't get to 10. I have games I will be getting rid of. One of the rules I do have in this series is if I have a review coming out, then I hold off and I save that game for the next month's collection. I don't want to get rid of a game now, and then 2 weeks from now you see the review of it. So that is a balance. Technically, I could get rid of 10 otherwise, but then I'd be taking from next month and the problem would perpetuate itself. That's neither here nor there. Let's go ahead and move on to 2 more easy ones before we tackle the harder ones. So, we have Kingdom Run. Kingdom Run is going to be a game that I reviewed with Ricky from Uncommon Games. It's going to be a game I reviewed with Ricky, I don't know how long ago, maybe 5-6 months ago. It's one that we enjoyed. It's a lighter game which you're going to basically be rolling dice to advance along this little run. We enjoyed the puzzle. We've had fun playing with it, but I would say it hasn't been requested in my family for probably close to 3-4 months now, and it's one that when I asked them if they're comfortable getting rid of it, the answer was, yeah, they're fine with it. There are a lot of kids games. We have an entire Calyx shelf, not like one Calyx shelf, an entire Calyx cubby full of shelves devoted to the kids games, because my kids have a lower threshold quality than I do, at least in my opinion. They often want all the shiny and aren't as, I want the shiny too, but they're not faced with as much the decision choices around which shiny to keep and which shiny to get rid of. They just want to keep all the shiny. So my rule is when games stop being played, I ask them how much they care, and sometimes they care, and we just haven't played in a long time, and that's fair. I have that in my own collection too, and other times with Kingdom Run, they're like, it's good, but you can get rid of it. Speaking of games that are shiny that I want to keep, but I will move on from because of limited time and attention, we have Drawn to Adventure from Final Frontier Games. This is one that I reviewed, again, I don't know exactly how long ago I did. This is one I reviewed and gave it a 3 out of 5. It is a game that I simultaneously really enjoyed what it was doing and thought it was a semi-unique aspect or addition to the roll and write genre, while at the same time feeling a little longer than I would like for the experience it has given me, which is why after the review, I think I've dived back into it 1 time since the initial review, and I enjoyed it. I'm happy I did, but nonetheless, it's one that I don't feel the need to continuously keep diving into, given the other types of roll and write. See, Drawn to Adventure is going to be an RPG-style roll and write game. You're going to be rolling dice, drawing on a map, and then trying to collect treasure as you go through basically 3 levels, 3 dungeons. And that makes it already interesting. It's a bit of a RPG, roll and write, works really well. The gameplay is fun, but not amazing. That's where the problem lies, because I don't mind a longer, heavier roll and write. Not that I've played Hadrian's Wall. I want to play Hadrian's Wall. I haven't yet. I've read the rules. I haven't played it. I'll get to it eventually, like everything else. But let's say Ganshun Clever. Ganshun Clever is going to be slightly on the longer side. Fleet's going to be slightly on the longer side. Those are going to be experiences. Raja's Dice Charmer is slightly on the longer side. I don't mind a longer adventure if the puzzle of what I'm rolling and intermingling pays off. My problem with Drawn to Adventure, and the reason it was a 3 at the time, and the reason it's only been given one more play since I've gotten rid of it, since I'm, well, getting rid of it, is the fact that Drawn to Adventure didn't have that epic, amazing chaining that some of these games have. Rather, what made this one different, what made it unique, is not the chaining and not the way that interplayed, but rather just the fact that you're running around on a map, so it feels a little bit like you're adventuring, and because you are adventuring. So the gameplay wasn't deep, it was different, and it was too long for a game that is not deep, but also a roll and write at the same time. Hopefully that all made sense. It made sense in my head. But either way, moving on to, let's do this one. Barbarians the Invasion. Barbarians the Invasion is a tough one. This is one that I actually put on a list quite some time ago of 10 games, like the 10 worst games in my collection. And it wasn't bad games. I made that very clear in the video title, well, not the title, in the video intro, but rather in my collection of games, the types of games that I am often looking at and thinking through, am I going to keep you? Am I going to get rid of you? Why should I keep you? Why should I get rid of you? There are 10 games that were in that video, and they have slowly made their way onto the chopping block in these monthly episodes as time has gone on. The nature of me picking it out and saying, you're the worst game I still own, even though I like you, does mean that they are eventually likely to hit the chopping block. This is not the last one standing. There are still more. I'd have to take a look at the video to see what else is left. But I can tell you offhand, Besieged at the very least. Besieged is still left standing. So we'll see which one makes its way to the end. Now, Barbarians the Invasion is a very hard one for me because I really like this game. Like, I really, really enjoy it. But I haven't played it in a while. And to the point, by the way, this is actually the upgraded set that I got, and I got the upgraded set because I really like the base game, but then I haven't played it with the upgraded set. It's more just, you know, miniatures and cards and things like that, the trays, component stuff, some iconography, all that kind of thing. The actual game's really the same. And I really, 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 really enjoy it, and I'm sad to see it go. It's not, there's at least 2 here, at least 3 here, 2, let's say there's at least 2 here I'm really sad to see it go, in addition to the usual sadness around letting games go. But yeah, it's one that I like. I like it. It's got a worker placement element. It's got this little kind of cascading volcano. I don't know what it is, but it's got this little tiered circle. You're going to be putting your workers down, and then you can spin and rotate the circle, and then you move a worker down from your last worker. So it has this chaining worker placement, tiered down the volcano kind of situation that works really well, and I like the game. And the reason I don't play it as much as I would like to is because there's a lot of good games, and this one hit the chopping block because it's a little more on the fiddly side. While I really enjoy what the game is doing, it never feels like I'm playing a cohesive single game. It kind of feels like I'm playing 3-4 separate disparate parts that combine and work well together, but it's one that I really, really enjoy every single time I play it, but I don't have the call to pull it out quite as much as other games in my collection. When I'm looking around, that process of looking at my shelves at my collection and trying to figure out what stays and what goes is usually the process of asking myself, do I realistically think there's a point in time in which I'm going to pull that out and play it over the other games? It doesn't matter how much I like it. The question is, realistically, will I get it played? And while trying to be honest with myself and counter the FOMO, I don't think Barbarians is getting played amongst other games that I prefer, as much as I might like it. Speaking of which, that's going to take us directly to the next one, which is going to be the Taverns of Tiefenthal. And this one, again, makes me very sad. Now, this one, Barbarians is going to have its own passionate audience, I'm sure, but a smaller audience, not as well known of a game. That's the sentence we're looking for. But the Taverns of Tiefenthal by North Star Games. This is going to be the spirit. Well, I think it's actually, the licensing has actually been passed to the people who do monikers like KMCY Games. It's like a bunch of letters, I think, if I recall correctly. But North Star Games, who originally did the Taverns of Tiefenthal and the Quacks of Quedlinburg, designed by, there we go, Wolfgang Warsch. And this is going to be the spiritual successor to Quacks of Quedlinburg. Again, combining elegant gameplay with like a little bit of a chaotic mess. Both those games do that system well. And the reason this one's going is ultimately because between Cubitos and Quacks of Quedlinburg, I feel I already have that genre covered in a way that is not necessarily better. In fact, I think Taverns of Tiefenthal is better, but I would say more accessible and more likely to be played. See, the Taverns of Tiefenthal is going to have a little bit of a deck building element as you try to basically manage your bar and figure out where everything's going as you build out your deck and you manage your patrons and you upgrade your bar and you serve things, all these things going on in a slightly chaotic mess that really works fairly well. But it doesn't, something about the game has resulted in me not playing it as much as I like the game. There is an expansion. I have not gotten the expansion. I've held off on getting it because for a while now I've known this was potentially on the chopping block. Now, like I said already, I think it is a better game than Quacks of Quedlinburg or Cubitos. I think in terms of looking at pure game mechanics, I think it gives you a more elegant experience, arguably, or at least more I don't have a good word for it, a more mechanically sound experience. Let's go with that. But the difference between the two is Quacks of Quedlinburg is easy to pull out, play, and teach. Cubitos is easy to pull out, play, and teach. And I don't find Taverns of Tiefenthal to have that same degree of accessibility. It is not as deep as some of the heavier games that I really love playing, but nor is it as accessible as games like Quacks or Cubitos. So, as much as I do like it, and as much as I am very sad to see this one go alongside Barbarians and, well, a bunch of these to a degree, it's one that I think, realistically, when I'm doing that assessment, I don't think it's seeing play amongst a variety of other amazing games that I'd just rather table. Which brings us to, and this is which one I go for. I'm gonna go for this, the bigger one first. Okay, so the bigger one, which you may have seen in the thumbnails, but not the thumbnails, in the timestamps. One of the fun parts about timestamping everything, instead of saying game 1, game 2, game 3, and actually timestamping everything. So when I put in Cthulhu Wars into the timestamp, people already knew this was coming. I'm basically giving spoilers to what's coming in the video, which is perhaps not as good, but at least the person who is going to click away from the video entirely now has a reason to stick around. So maybe I'm losing some people and saving others. I don't really know. Now, Cthulhu Wars is one that I also just rated this past month, but it's a one that I gave a 4 to 5 to, which might have you confused as to why I'm getting rid of it. Again, this goes back to whether you watch every video of mine and how much you actually know or follow about my preferences, what I like, don't like, what I can see others not like. I'm just in review talk. What I like and don't like about games and where I am with them. You see, Cthulhu Wars is a game that let's go high level first. Cthulhu Wars, if it shows in the back of the box here, you see, I'm afraid to flip this one because I don't know how everything's stored in here. It's making me nervous. You see, the original game comes with an insert, but if you have even a single expansion, it's not going to fit in, and I have a bunch of expansions, some in this box, some very much not. But Cthulhu Wars is going to be an area control experience, as you control a variety. I'm gonna move this out of the way because I don't know what it's doing to the camera, but Cthulhu Wars is going to be an area control experience, one in which you're controlling a variety of elder gods as you kind of, well, try to generate the most power and ultimately win the game. It's one which winning is a common way that you approach most games, but it's one in which you're going to have your asymmetric elder gods, all of which have their own units, their own ways of upgrading, their own tombs and spell books that you're going to be going with, and it's an incredibly fun experience that I've really enjoyed every single time I've played it. But the problem is, the baseline problem, before we get into Cthulhu Wars as an example, is a 4 to 5 in the genre of area control is just not good enough for my collection, because area control is one of my favorite genres, although usually it's area control combined with something else. Area control on its own I don't care for. Area control combined with drafting, combined with powers and abilities, combined with unique action selection mechanisms, combined with bidding. The area control I find is a beautiful mound of Play-Doh, is that a thing? A beautiful something of Play-Doh that can be molded and shaped around the rest of the game mechanics, and to that end, I have a lot of games in my collection that are 5s in the area control genre. I have Blood Rage, I have Inish, I have Cyclades, I have Kemet, I have Lords of Hellas, Ankh's gonna be up there. We haven't reviewed it yet, but Ankh is gonna be up there, I'll tell you that right now. There's more games that are not particularly remembering off the hand. Chaos in the Old World. There are Rurik, Dawn of Kiev. There are a bunch of games in the area control genre that I rate as 5s, that I love diving into them, that you combine the uniqueness of the game, the elegance of Inish, the bidding of Cyclades, the action planning of Rurik. They all give me incredible experiences, and they're all absolutely 5s to me. Cthulhu Wars is a 4. I really like Cthulhu Wars. I would never turn down a game, but I'm not going to be the one pulling it off the shelf to suggest it when it comes time to play the game. Root's another great game, but I'm getting distracted again. Cthulhu Wars is one that I really enjoy, but I'm not pulling 4s off the shelf to play them in a genre where I am overflowing with 5s. And then you combine that with the size of the box, the fact that there's a ton of content for it. I have a whole bunch of expansions, and I don't even know what to pull in to have in the game. I don't know which expansions will make the game better. I've tried a few, and they've all been fun, but still keeping Cthulhu Wars as a 4. You see, my main problem with the game is I like the powers and abilities, but I don't love them that much. I don't love the fact that the asymmetry, I love powers and abilities in general, which is a huge drive for me, but I'd much rather play a game of Blood Rage, a game of Kemet, a game of Ankh, where I have some degree of control over the way my faction develops, as opposed to being locked into the 6 specific abilities that I have. I don't feel like really choosing how my faction develops. I don't really feel a large degree of agency over what happens when I'm Cthulhu or when I'm Yogg-Sothoth or when I'm whoever in the game. I feel I've been given my faction and now I'm going to play it the way it's meant to be played. And yes, it will be fun. There's still choices to be made in the actual area control. Of course, there's choices. In no way am I saying there's a lack of tactics in this game. I gave it a 4 to 5. 4 to 5s are generally games that stay in my collection. Just not when I'm talking about a genre that is overpopulated with games I love so much. And Cthulhu Wars, like I said a few times now, is just a 4 for me. Now, this is not the last one on the list. Those of you timestamp people know this already. But we're going to have Tigris and Euphrates, which is the highest rated game for me that I'm getting rid of. This one has been in my top 50, and it's a hard one. Tigris and Euphrates is a game that I absolutely recommend. It's going to join, I want to say, Ra and Domain. Ra and Domain are going to be, and I know Ra is going to get love, and Tigris and Euphrates is going to get love, and Domain is going to get a handful of people who love it, and a handful of people who are like, that one wasn't so good. But for me, it was. For me, Ra, Domain, and Tigris and Euphrates are all examples of games that are leaving my collection, not because in any way do I think little of them at all. They have all been games that were in my top whatever at some point. They have all been games that I love the elegance, I love the gameplay, and I've dived into them time and time again over the past 10 years. And that sentence is the problem. Over the past 10 years. Ra, Domain, and Tigris are all games that I have played to death. They are all games I have played a ton over the past 10 years, and I've really enjoyed my experience and my time with them. But at a certain point, I'm less likely to rush back to that game because I've played it, I've seen it happen. And also, as you introduce new gamers to your group, I'm better at those games to a degree. Not always. Ra, I managed to lose that still. But Tigris is a game I rarely lose anymore. Domain is one that I rarely lost as I played it. These are games that are incredible experiences, but I've been playing them for 10 years. I've gotten tons of experience and gameplay and enjoyment out of them. And then new players enter the group and I know them a little better. And it's a combination of thinking I'm going to win anyway and just I want to play something new. I want to play something I haven't played 30, 40 times. Some games I do want to play 30, 40 times. But most games, I'm fine with the fact that there's a cycle. I'm fine with the fact that there's a degree of enjoyment as you go through it. I mean, Gladiator is my #1 movie of all time. Maybe Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans is also very, very good. But those are all movies or that I've watched 10, 15 times. If I've played some of my favorite games more than I've watched some of my favorite movies, at a certain point, I'm ready to move on from them. And that's where Tigris and Euphrates last. Now, this one did last longer than Domain or Ra because I think it is better than Domain or Ra. Like I said, I've put this in my top 50 games of all time. And it's such a weird thing. See, it lends itself to an interesting question I'm going to have to deal with when composing my top 100 this year, which is games that I get rid of are not going to be in my top 100. They're not. It's just the principle I'm putting in place. And yet, if I were trying to suggest a top 100 to you, I might put those in the collection. So, Tigris and Euphrates is a great example. It's a game that I would absolutely put in a top 100, but the top 100 to me is not from all time. It's the top 100 of all time as of now. As of my experience with them, which means you can have newer experiences that are fresher, more exciting, and more innovative. You'll see that drift off over time. I did a video once with the top 100 statistics with Tom Vassell from the Dice Tower. I'll link to it down below, but there is a natural ebb and flow of how much you love a game, the nature of progression over time, and things just dropping off, which in the case of Tigris and Euphrates, this Reiner Knizia classic of area control, not really area control in a typical sense, but it does have area control. You're going to be basically spreading out your civilizations across this board. You're going to be placing down different tiles, and you're going to eventually run into combats with the various players. All those things are really elegant, but what I love about it is the twist of the revolution versus a war, whether you have an internal revolution in which you're overthrowing the factions, or whether you're having a full-out war. And the different ways you approach those two battles means there's always a way to break your opponent. There's always a way to somehow get in there. But it's the amount of energy you expend on any one single battle. It's the way you position yourself defensively and not just offensively. It's the way you go for monuments, because it's not about having the most things. It's about having the right things. Your score is going to be the lowest of 4 different numbers. If you ever played Ingenious from Reiner Knizia, same idea. You're going to have 4 different colors. You're trying to collect these resources. And the one you collect the worst of, the least of, that's your score. So it's not about raking in red resources every single turn. It's about being balanced in this game, which means often the person you think is winning isn't really winning because you've been focusing more on the number of things they've been gathering as opposed to what they've been gathering. It is an incredible experience. It's a game I easily recommend, and it's a game I've played enough times that I'm ready to move on from. And that is going to be the games I'm getting rid of for September. It's getting painful. It's getting painful. Tigris Euphrates is a game that I've been eyeing for a while, but I haven't wanted to get rid of it because it's such a good experience. Now, I do still have Yellow and Yangtze, by the way. Yellow and Yangtze is going to be a competitor from Reiner Knizia. It's going to be his newer version of Tigris and Euphrates, and I do plan on diving into that at some point to see if the differences, the changes, perhaps give me a fresher look on this game, because, I mean, it's a really good game. It's just time to move on. That's basically going to be the games leaving my collection for August, not September. I'm very curious to see how September plays out. I'm playing a lot of good games. I have a lot of games in my collection, and I don't want to see them go. There are too many games that I am really enjoying, but again, hard decisions have to be made. My collection is a mix of some really, really old games that have been there for a long time, and a lot of newer games that I like games and keep adding new ones to my collection. Until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and have a good one.